she's organizing a trip.
Oh, good. Okay, good deal. Nice. Good morning. My name is Rick Davis, and I have the honor of being the moderator for today's panel discussion. I'm going to introduce, we have 6 expert speakers, 3 of whom are sitting here, and 3 of whom we will be seeing via Zoom. But before I introduce them, just a couple of quick housekeeping details, I guess they say. For restrooms, we have 2 here, 1 in each corner, and we have 2 on the first floor, 1 by each of the 2 external entrances. If there is an emergency, you can go back the same way you came in if you're here in person, and there's another exit over here to your right in the corner that'll take you down and out. And certainly hope that that is not going to be necessary. This is the first event of a series of events that are in observance of I'm going to read it so I get the name right, the National Homeless Children and Youth Awareness Month. And that is definitely our focus of the panel today. So the people that we have speaking today are Brenna Jones, who has experienced homelessness herself and is now a senior at Maine.
Research. Recording in progress.
And also we have Judy Cohen, and she's the McKinney-Vento Homeless Liaison for Searsport High School. And thirdly up here will be Michael Quinney, who's Outreach and Admissions Manager for the Penobscot Job Corps. With us on Zoom, we have Avery Witham. Can you wave, Avery, if you're here? I guess the name is up there. And he also has experienced homelessness and is now on the Maine Statewide Youth Action Board of New Beginnings. Also at home is Nikisha Hedrick, the Northeast Director of Family Promise. Nikisha, are you? Oh, there she is. Thank you. And lastly, we will hear from Neva Allen, the founder and president of But Still I Am One, and one of the big movers in creating this panel today. So each speaker will be allowed 10 minutes. We ask that questions be held until the end of the 6 presentations, and then we will have questions and answers then at that point, and both on Zoom and on in person. So with that, I'm going to introduce again Judy Cohen from Searsport High School, who's our first panelist. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hear me, right? You can hear me. So my name is Judy Cohen, and I'm really working for RSU 20, which includes Searsport and Stockton Springs, and I'm working K-12, not just for the high school. And I am the McKinney-Vento Homeless Liaison. McKinney-Vento is a federal law. It's an act that provides school with a way to deal with children, students who are their education is suffering because of their housing situation or their lack of housing situation. So what it does is it ensures that students can enroll in a public school without any barriers. They don't require you to bring in the typical documents. If a teenager wants to come in themselves and register without a guardian, we take away all the barriers. Eventually we try to get what they need, immunization, documents, and so forth, but we don't keep them out of school, we immediately enroll them. And the other thing it does is it gives rights to the parents and the child so that they can choose. Let's say you get displaced temporarily, could be because of homelessness, could be because of a fire, or you lose your job and you can't pay your rent anymore, and let's say you go to stay with a relative or a friend in a different town. Well, that family now has a choice. They can have their kid continue to come to the RSU school district if that makes them feel more stable, which certainly in terms of a senior, it definitely does, because otherwise kids drop out. And if they want to transfer their child to another school district, they can do that too. So it gives more power to the parent, and the school districts where they are and where they live are supposed to collaborate together to transport that student both ways. So lots of times, so my job as the McKinney-Vento liaison was first to find out who's homeless, which families in our district are not living in their own home. And the kinds of situations that there are sharing, like doubled up is the most typical. People are living at their friend's house or their grandmother's house or their auntie's house or something like that, a whole family. And oftentimes they're traveling from one friend to another because it's hard to live in somebody else's house. Oftentimes they don't have their own bed. They might be sleeping on a couch. Children might be on the floor. So it's a very difficult situation, and families tend to, I've seen families burn out in one situation and go to another, sometimes with their children. There are people also living in motels. We had lots of people living in motels through COVID. Motels, hotels, campers, campsites, all of those kinds of things. We don't have transitional housing in this area, but if we did, there would be people that would access that kind of benefit. And we also don't have shelters in Mid-Coast Maine. I have one family that's living in a shelter in Orland, which is in Hancock, just above Bucksport, but that's the only shelter in this area, and it's the only shelter I know of, so they only have 3 rooms, so we don't have a lot of shelter space. There's no shelter here in Waldo County. I've had people living in cars, living at campgrounds, like I said. I have not seen in the school community people living in tents or camping out in the winter. I haven't seen that, but in the summer people do that. People have been in tents. So what defines homelessness is not necessarily that you don't have a roof over your head for McKinney-Vento. It's that you don't have a regular, fixed, adequate nighttime residence. Either it's not your own, and the problem in this neighborhood or in this area is that and I just also want to say very importantly, there isn't not one kind of homeless people. There are families where 2 adults are working, and for whatever reason they've lost their rental, and there are no more affordable rentals. So they're working poor, or they're working not poor, but they're working, but there are no affordable rentals, and we all know what the housing market is like. So people are stuck. They have no place to go. There are subsidized apartments through Maine State Housing, but the lists have many years long waiting lists. People who are very, very on top of their game and call and call and call. Once in a blue moon, somebody finds a place, but it's very, very rare. So for me, then there's also, including families who are homeless with their students, whether they're in kindergarten or 10th grade, doesn't matter. We have quite a few. But then we also have teenagers who are unaccompanied, which means they are not living in the physical custody of their parent. Most of them find host homes on their own. They are staying with a friend and their family, or they're staying with a relative that is trying to help them out. Again, if they're not in our driving district where our buses go, because we're just doing Stockton and Searsport, if they come to Belfast, we have to pick them up. And I would say, to the credit of RSU 20, we've gone as far as Ellsworth and Unity and Camden. Right now, we're going to those 3 places to help people get to school. And the goal of McKinney-Vento is to keep kids stable in school, because it might be the only stability in their lives. Let's see. So the biggest thing I do, to be honest, is I advocate and inform people, because a lot of people don't know what their rights are. So the first thing I did, this is my 3rd year doing this, is I didn't create it, but there are templates at the McKinney-Vento, and the DOE is connected with McKinney-Vento, the Department of Education. There are forms, there were templates of forms to put in the, every fall, every kid gets a packet of forms, permission forms and so forth, for parents to sign, and it asks the question, Are you sharing your own place? Do you have your own place? Are you in foster care? Are you living in a motel, in a camper? So I've gotten back some of these forms, people who fill them out. I'm sure there are more people that have those needs that don't fill out the form, because there's a lot of shame, pride, embarrassment, just a lot of people, privacy issues, people, not everybody tells you. So there's no way to tell if a person is homeless, so I had to look for the homeless people in our district, the homeless families, and then inform them of their rights, because most of the time they don't know that they have these rights. And I would say this, that I'm supposed to, as the McKinney-Vento liaison, all of the kids that I know that are living in homeless situations, I try to get them what they lack. Do they need Maine care? Do they need food stamps if they're unaccompanied? Or even if they are accompanied, even if they're living with their parents, what do their parents need? We're hooked up with the Belfast Soup Kitchen as well. We have a food pantry in our school, and we also do a weekend program for pre-K through 5th grade. We have right now 40 to 50 bags of food that go home every weekend for little kids that they can prepare themselves. And those kids don't necessarily have to be homeless. There's a lot of food insecurity for kids who even are living at home. But again, parents sign up for that program if they want their child to bring food home every week. I refer kids to counseling, to case management, try to deal with DHHS, Social Security, getting disabled kids their SSI benefits, trying to reach out to host homes and help those adults who have graciously taken unaccompanied youth into their house. I've often tried to help them get what they need, and they need a lot. But still I am one, and Neva Allen has given us some credit cards for young people aged 16 to 21 to get what they need. And it's a private program, so they're tracking where they're spending their money. And where are people spending money? On food, on necessities, on gas, to get places, things like that. There's also some money available through the DOE, which I have to advocate. I have to advocate in my own school district to get that money to the right people, that it shouldn't go into some general fund, because I have people who owe $2,000 to CMP and their electricity is going to get shut off. That seems more important to me. There are people who, their car is going to get repossessed if they don't come up with a few $100s soon. So it gets, once you're homeless, things just get worse and worse because people can't get ahead of themselves. And I just listed some general reasons that people are homeless. I'm just going to read them off. There's poverty, lack of work, lack of transportation, family dysfunction, alcoholism, addiction, mental health problems, domestic violence. Domestic violence, addiction, mental health problems are really big issues in Waldo County. And lots of children, students, the teenagers that I work with who are living in those situations, oftentimes they're the ones who leave their home because it's not a place that feels safe for them. They're either, not being treated well by somebody's boyfriend, or there's, all the way to there's a meth lab in their house. So that's what I do, and I also reach out to the Searsport church community and go to meetings, and do like outreach work, and I'm just calling people up saying, what do you need? So that's what McKinney-Vento does. It keeps kids in school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Our next speaker is Brenna Jones, who has experienced homelessness herself and is currently researching solutions to the housing crisis. Brenna.
Hi, I'm Brenna. Thank you, Judy. That was really great. Actually, a lot of the things that she talked about are things that I want to talk about from the student side. I was unhoused in high school. It started when my mother went to Hawaii just off on a whim with her boyfriend, and I was left as a 14, 15-year-old wanting to stay in the same high school. My dad was living 2.5 hours away and decided that I would try to stay in the area that I was in. And what that involved was a lot of work around on my part, but there's just a few things I'm going to talk about, and I guess the main themes I'll talk about so you can pay attention to this are, first, understanding that a lot of people's experiences are a lot more complex than we tend to make them, that either their definitions don't fit in these neat little boxes, their decisions don't seem to make sense to adults and things of that sort, and also that a lot of people who are young and homeless don't have the kind of understanding and compassion from adults in their life that you might think that they would have. So with that disclaimer, another disclaimer is that my experiences are only my experiences, so don't try to apply it to other people's experiences. So I lived in my car throughout high school. I had an apartment, and I was forced to get that apartment just for an address. When the school found out that I wasn't living in the school district, I was threatened with being kicked out of the school unless I found an address on I lived at MDI on the island that was close enough to my school district. And so instantly the reaction I got from my school was, if you aren't following these rules, which is your parents live close enough, you're living in their household, then you won't even be allowed to go to school here. And I was a straight A student, had lots and lots of friends, and a boyfriend at the time at the school, and was very terrified of losing my position within the school. And so that kind of set off a thing where I had this apartment off and on because Bar Harbor has seasonal rentals, so I did not have it during the summer, and I was living in my car, but I was terrified of telling people what was going on with me and actively trying to hide it because I was scared that I was going to be kicked out of the school that I really, really loved the culture and everything, and I had gone to like 5 different schools before that, so it was really important to me to stay in this school. So my typical day looked like going to school. I got there at like 6 a.m. I would sleep on the band room floor with blankets. Also throughout this, you should notice that lots of teachers should have realized what was going on. So I was sleeping on the floor with blankets during my break time, and everyone just thought I was the quirky kid with food in her band locker and sleeping on the floor. And I'd go out throughout my classes, was doing really, really well in school, and then after school I would sign up for as many extracurriculars as possible so that I could stay in the school in this warm environment with people around before I had to leave and find some place to stay for the night. And so typically after that, I would drive to Bangor, where a lot of the people that I knew that had houses without parents were college students in dorms, and so I would go stay with them and typically stay in McDonald's doing homework until about midnight when they kicked me out after staying there for hours, and then try to go to sleep for a few hours and drive back to school. And so I want to point out a few things about my experiences within this, and even sharing my experiences before, is that lots of people ask so many questions. They're like, why were you driving all the way to Bangor? Why weren't you trying to find help on the island? Why would you possibly not stay in that apartment that you were having? Why would you do this? Why would you do that? And first, my always answer is I was 16 years old and didn't really understand what I was doing, and I was trying to survive, and that included trying to find community and make decisions like driving back and forth from Bangor to Bar Harbor, 45 minutes each way. And the other answer is that, you know, people have to do things that you might not think that you would make decisions in order for them to survive. And so the main things that I think people should take away from students being homeless is that, one, they're really terrified of being found out, that it's a secretive thing, that either because of shame or because they've been told that they're going to be kicked out of school if they tell someone. They're not going to want to tell someone, and it's not my responsibility as a student to come to you with my experiences. It's the adults in the situation to recognize these warning signs, and people you might not even think are homeless, because I had straight A grades, that we should create a culture of it's okay to speak up. Let's talk about that there are homeless kids in this high school and things like that. And the other thing to take away is just understanding in general. I was made fun of a lot in high school for having food in my car, of having clothes all over my car and things of that sort, of being the weird kid sleeping on the band room floor. And instead of making fun of this weird student that might have seemed weird in other people's eyes, I think adults easily could have taken a step back and think, like, what is this situation? How can we approach this ethically and not make fun of her for it? I even had a history teacher at one point, like, in front of the whole class being like, oh, she has to do grocery shopping herself. Isn't that weird? And I was like, that was a teacher that I've actually felt kind of safe with and completely tried to disclose my experiences. And so I just urge, like, if you're an adult and you're around children a lot, try to do things discreetly, try to make sure that they do know their rights, and I appreciate you reaching out to students and letting them know that, even if you don't think that they're homeless, letting everybody know that those things exist is really important. And then if someone does come to you, just being really understanding that they're making the decisions that seem right to them in the moment, even if you don't understand it. It is for their own safety, whether mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever the reason, they have their reasons for doing that. So we just need to expand what we think homelessness is and what homelessness in youth is especially. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenna. Our next speaker has also experienced homelessness. He's visiting us with on Zoom. Avery Witham. Are you with us, Avery?
Hi, I'm a little bit nervous. My name's Avery. I work with the Youth Action Board on advocating for homelessness within youth, high risk youth such as BIPOC, LGBTQ community, um, things like that. I relate a lot to Brenna and her experiences. I was homeless in elementary school actually, due to my mother. My mother and my stepfather were very involved with addiction, just a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. I didn't live in Maine at the time. I lived in downtown uh, Miami, Miami, Florida. So there's a lot of homeless kids when I was a kid, but I made a list. So when I was a kid, I used to go to school in clothes that were raggedy, old. We couldn't afford much food, we couldn't afford clothes, we couldn't afford rent. So a lot of the times we would get kicked out of the same house over and over and over because my mom just wasn't doing what she was supposed to. My mom was so heavily into drugs that she didn't understand what she was doing to me and my siblings at the time, was causing a lot of issues within the school. Despite that, I made straight A's in school. I was on a roll every single time, but I was like, obviously, I didn't go to school that much, so I stayed back in kindergarten because my mom didn't take me to school for 3 months, and it obviously you can't take your kid to school for 3 months, like they're gonna stay back. Um, So I went into foster care when I was 7. I turned 7, but before that, had gotten evicted from the house when I was 5, and I lived in a car, I lived in motels, I lived outside at one point, literally in a tent outside of a hotel. Um, I was also bullied a lot as a child, all the time. I used to get hit. This little girl used to pull my hair out of my head because I look raggedy enough. Why not? Um, Basically, I advocate for people like myself and like Brenna and people who have experienced homelessness so that this doesn't happen again. Because not my experiences are shared with a bunch of people, and I don't think that should be happening. I think that we should make programs like McKinney-Vento to recognize these children, because there is no way that a teacher could look at me and say this child is not homeless, because I came to school with unbrushed hair. I came to school unprepared. I walked myself to school half the time because the bus would come too late and my mom would wake me up at 5 years old. Um, I oh, also as a child, I made a notes because I'm not great at this. My mom would run away on like days on end. So I would have to wake up my own siblings to go to school when I was in kindergarten and first grade because there was no one else to do it. So I would wake myself up, and I also, not only that, I would teach my own, like, you know how your parents are supposed to help you at 5 years old with your homework? I never had that help. I had to learn everything on my own. Excuse the background noise, sorry. I had to learn everything on my own. I had to take care of myself. I had to take care of my siblings, feed them. And as a 6-year-old, you can't go to a store and buy things. No one's just going to give you anything for free. So I used to run down to neighbors' houses and ask for food. And not only that, like, we used to run around naked outside because we weren't supervised at all. Um, so there was warning signs, and the schools never did anything to help. No one noticed. Nobody cared. Um, Finally, when I was like around 7 years old, the neighbors called the cops on us because we would go into their house and steal food from them when they were away. Um, and when the cops came, obviously, like, they didn't see anything. They said, "Oh, these kids are just misbehaving. Like, their parents are at work." But in reality, my mom was off running away with her other boyfriend, and my stepdad was drunk in the bathroom. Um, yeah, so that's my experience. I went to foster care shortly after that. And not long after going to foster care, I went and I lived with my dad. Um, and I ended up here in Maine because of instability with my father. He was just not good. So that's my experience, and I think that programs like this, who advocate and share their experiences, are great. Um, thank you.
Thank you, Avery, for sharing your experiences with us. Our next panelist is Nikisha Hedrick, who's from Family Promise. She's the Northeast Director, and she'll, I presume, explain what Family Promise is.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nikisha Hedrick, and I am the Northeast Regional Director for Family Promise. I have a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see it? Okay, awesome. So Family Promise, our mission is to transform the lives of families experiencing homelessness because every child deserves a home. A little bit about myself. As I stated, I'm the Northeast Regional Director for Family Promise. With that being said, I oversee and assist 41 affiliates throughout Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Some of my background, I actually, before working for Family Promise, I actually worked in secondary education, and I worked with McKinney-Vento liaisons. I worked in the counseling department of a high school. And so the stories that we just heard from Brenna and Avery are real stories that I actually helped with in that space. And now I'm on Family Promise and working at a larger level. So our organization began about 40 years ago, and it really started with Miss Karen Olson. She was working and she met a woman one morning who simply asked her if she could buy a sandwich. That woman's name was Millie. Karen bought the sandwich, but more than that, she actually sat down and spoke with the lady and, asked her what happened, like what was her story, how did she get into that situation? And from that discussion, she learned a lot about Millie. She learned, how she had come to this place in her life. So Karen went back to her hometown. She went back to her faith community and said, hey, homelessness is an issue in our community. And we need to do something about it. So they literally just opened up their doors. They would allow Millie, and then it was other people that would come and stay, and they would just really mentor them and help them get back on track. And so in general, Family Promise is indeed a community-based response to address family homelessness and housing insecurity. Our mission is to help families, not just those who are declared homeless, but those that are low income. And our goal is to help them achieve sustainable independence through a community-based response. And again, our vision is a nation in which every family has a home, a livelihood, and the chance to build a better future. So from that first meeting with Millie and Karen almost 40 years ago, Family Promise has evolved, and we are now located in 43 states, and there are about 200 affiliates nationwide who help families that are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. Our core areas are prevention, shelter, and stabilization. And since 1988, we have been able to help over 1 million individuals. So if you've seen anything about Family Promise, or even if you have not, you may see this star. And this star is somewhat of our guiding light. It recognizes the core areas in which we are committed to helping. We're committed to the community. We're committed to the promise of helping families in need. We're committed to prevention of homelessness. We're committed to providing shelter, some type of housing option, and also helping families become stable. This just shows our breadth of location throughout the country. Again, we have over 200 affiliates. We have them literally almost in every state. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it shows a community response. But it's also tragic that homelessness is affecting our nation, one of the richest nation in the world, to the degree that it is. So in 22 alone, we helped over 241,000 people and almost 90,000 children. Throughout our various methods of service delivery, we sheltered almost 16,000 individuals, and almost 20,000 individuals were served through stabilization programs. This is a lot of information packed on this screen, but it just really goes to show the breadth of the programs and services that we provide. Again, our core areas are prevention. If we can help folks stay in their home, that would be ideal. Diversion is if we are able to assist families in not having to come to our shelter. Yes, we have shelter, which is great. It is wonderful. But ideally, if we can help people not have to experience the trauma of homelessness and housing insecurity, that would be ideal. We also, again, we really want folks to be stable in their homes. And so that is a lot of our service area as well. Oh, and speaking to our shelter models, we have various models. We have the rotational model, which is really leaning into the faith community. And so members of the faith community, they open up their synagogues, they open up their churches, sometimes the civic organizations, they open up their spaces, and they allow families to stay there anywhere from a week up to a month at a time. Our affiliates have case managers who assist them. There's a lot of volunteers that help them as well. We also have a static model, which is families are able to stay at one specific location. That time varies anywhere from about 4 months up into a year, depending on the affiliate. And then families are successfully moved into their own housing, again, with the support of our affiliate. We have a hybrid model where it may be rotation. It may be placing families in motels until we're able to get them into apartments. All of that looks different and is really unique because, again, it is a community-based response. So the makeup of the affiliate is really dependent on the services and the things that are in the community itself. So this is an interesting fact. In 2021, an estimated 7.1 million American households experienced severe housing cost burden, and that meant that they spent more than 50% of their income on housing. And of course, this was during COVID, but it still was a really big issue, and it is even to this day, even more so. In 2021, approximately 3.7 million people across the country were in those doubled up situations. And that's really important to tap into because that is not the HUD definition that is defined and recognized by HUD, which is pretty much the government standmark on housing. And I won't read this entire slide, but Children's Defense Fund in the 2020-2021 school year, they identified over 1 million students who were experiencing homelessness. And that is roughly 2.2 of all students enrolled in public schools. That is 1 in every 45 children in the year of 2020-2021 school year were identified as homeless. That's according to the Children's Defense Fund. But on the flip side, the January 22 PIT count only recognized almost a little over 580,000 people experiencing homelessness. And from that number, 28% of those people experiencing homelessness were actually identified as having families, being families composed of at least one adult and one child. And of that number, unaccompanied youth under the age of 18 make up about 5% of that total number. Now, why is all of this important? Again, it's because there's a disconnect in definitions of homelessness. As the first speaker began to talk about the McKinney-Vento, that is not lined up with the HUD definition. And so it makes it very difficult for a lot of people to receive the resources that they actually need. In many instances, you literally have to be outside to be able to qualify for any government assistance, and that's absolutely awful. And so I like to say that Family Promise operates in the gray area to help those families. And so because of this disconnected definition, we have been committed to helping rectify that. So we have been behind the Homeless Children and Youth Act. That has been one of our top priorities for about the past 6 years. We have been working with politicians across the aisle to really get this definition changed. It would help to synchronize the federal definitions of homelessness to be more inclusive for families and children. And those, and the main goal behind it is that those children and youth that are experiencing homelessness under the McKinney-Vento definition, they would indeed be eligible for HUD homelessness assistance. In this presentation, and I can share it if it's able to be shared with the attendees on today, we have created an info and advocacy toolkit. In it, there are letters that you can write to your local politicians. There are updates on some of the bills and the legislation that is currently taking place. We have a legislative tracker, and you can see an updated listing of some of the relevant and proposed legislation. And you can also see a list of the bills that have been endorsed by Family Promise. There's also a lot of easy calls of actions that we have created for different bills that are currently either up before the different bodies or have been placed on pause, but we have information that we can share with you all, most certainly to give you some more information about what we are doing as a national organization to address this issue. And I've also listed some of our priorities, which is Manufactured Housing, Community Preservation Act, the Eviction Crisis Act, and also Emergency Family Stabilization. And that is all that I have for you all, but I'm open to any questions that will probably be at the end of this presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keisha. And I hope you'll stay with us. We have questions at the end of the panel to give everybody a chance. Our next person speaking is Michael Quinney, and he's the Outreach and Admissions Manager of Penobscot Job Corps. Michael.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So thank you for having me, Judy. Thank you for reaching out to me. I appreciate that. So, you know, just like a few presenters already, I have a similar story. So in 1999, I dropped out of high school in 97, and I had worked two years making very little money. I came from a very poor home. We grew up in public housing, and it was very difficult for my mother, as a single mother with 4 boys, to make it. And you know, I worked for 2 years, and I wasn't making much money, and a friend of mine told me about this great program, Job Corps. So I applied for Job Corps, and in 2000, I left Haverhill, Massachusetts to come to Bangor, Maine to attend Job Corps. While I was a student at Job Corps, I earned my high school diploma, I earned a trade, and I also earned a lot of valuable skills that I still use today. When I graduated from Job Corps, it was in 2002. I went to work for about 6 months, and I realized that I didn't like carpentry out in the cold. So I knew about Job Corps, and I knew they were looking for some employees to work in the dorms, and anyone that was willing to basically stay up overnight and keep an eye on the students, and knew about the program, had a chance to get in. So I applied for the program. I didn't get hired until the third time I applied for the job, but Job Corps taught me to be persistent. Job Corps taught me to go after what I wanted to do. And I ended up getting hired. I've been there for about 19 years now. I have had several different jobs at Job Corps, but my favorite job that I'm doing is what I do now. I go out and I meet with youth. I go out and I talk to youth, and I go out and I seek out folks that need our program. Judy mentioned McKinney-Vento. One of the things that we recently began working with is McKinney-Vento students. We currently don't have any at Penobscot Job Corps or the Loring Job Corps Center. I recruit for both centers. The way that works with McKinney-Vento is if you are a McKinney-Vento youth, we can work with you to get you in the program. You qualify because you're technically homeless, all right? So that's how we get homeless. That's how we get a qualification for those youth. If you're speaking to a family and that family is on public assistance of any kind, food stamps, TANF, if the student is enrolled in school and they're collecting free lunch, we can work with those youth to get them into the program. So one of the things that Job Corps can help with is free housing for that youth, and it's a safe place to live. There's a lot of students on campus that work to make sure everyone feels comfortable. We have tons of leadership classes. We have a really nice environment for the youth that want to come to Job Corps. Who we're looking for is just motivated youth that really want to help break that poverty cycle, right? So in 1964, when President Lyndon B. Johnson enacted Job Corps, that was his goal. His goal was to fight the war on poverty. And since then, over 3 million people have come to Job Corps. So all throughout the country, we have at least one Job Corps in every single state. If you apply for Job Corps and you're not interested in something that we have in the state, I can look outside the state and send you to that Job Corps. We'll pay for it. We'll pay for you to come back to Maine. We hope you want to come back to Maine. And we'll also help you with applying for jobs after you leave Job Corps. That's our goal. So if it's not, there's the door, have a nice life, we're gonna follow you for a year after you leave Job Corps. Literally, we're gonna call you every month. How you doing? Can you share your pay stub with me and say, and I wanna be able to show the government what we're doing, right? So we also offer free driver's education. So if you are a youth that is looking to get a license, that's part of getting a job, right? We'll help you get a license. If you don't have a high school diploma, like I said, we have high school diploma classes. The Penobscot Job Corps is right on the cusp of being, we're already on the state of Maine website for it, but we're waiting for the national government to say yes to it. But we are an accredited high school now. So all of our teachers are Maine state certified teachers, and we are able to give out our own high school diplomas. However, we are working currently with James Madison and a couple of other online high school classes. So if a student needs a high school diploma, we'll work with that. If a student wants to go for a high set, we can do that as well. We also are a campus that is self-sustaining as far as medical needs. We employ doctors, dentists, therapists, and we have 4 full-time nurses on campus as well. So the students are well taken care of. You get 3 healthy meals a day, including some unhealthy snacks at nighttime. The students have a lot of fun with that. Yeah, it's what we want to do. We want to help as many youth as we can. 16 to 24 years old. If you know anybody, please let them know about Job Corps. I love to share my story with that because without Job Corps, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, and I mean that. Yeah, that's all I have for today. I'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And our last speaker is Neva Allen, founder and president of But Still I Am One.
Good morning. Appearing before you on Zoom makes my heart sing. You see, I have been disabled for 25 years. I started envisioning But Still I Am One back in 2004, after my husband, who was an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer at one of the high schools, told me about a group of 4 students who were in dire straits. Each one of them was homeless, so they had decided to join together to rent an apartment. They were trying to get through high school, work, pay rent, pay for food, electricity, gas, etc. Slowly, the pressure was too much. 3 of them ended up dropping out. With my disabilities, it's almost impossible for me to go to meetings, so I kept reading and watching. As the number of homeless young adults kept increasing, I was hoping that some government entity would step forward, but that didn't happen. When the pandemic started and all these people were getting used to being on Zoom, I realized I had a chance to make my vision a reality. We received our 501c3 in April of 2021. The mission of But Still I Am One is to assist homeless and home insecure young adults ages 16 to 21 in Waldo County. Home insecurity can mean couch surfing, living in a car, abandoned building, or a tent. We do this in a variety of ways. We provide a prepaid Visa card up to $500, which is a change from when we first started. At that time, we provided grocery store cards, gas cards, phones and phone cards. But then we heard about an organization in New York City called Point Source Youth that was providing their clients with direct cash transfers of $1,000 to $1,500 on a prepaid Visa card. After reading about their program, we decided that we would try something similar here, but with a smaller amount of money. This program gives young adults freedom and agency over their lives. They can buy what they need when they need it. In April of this year, we did a pilot program among the 5 high schools and Waldo County Technical Center. We provided each of them with 2 cards and gave them a $500 budget. The advantage of using these cards is that we can track where they are used. We learned several things from the pilot. First, there were some schools that were not comfortable distributing them to their students. While we distributed 12 cards, only 8 were used. Second, the students were very conscientious in how they spent their money. And third, most of it was spent on food and gas. The pilot program ran from April until the end of the school year in June. There were 103 transactions, and the average amount per transaction was only $22.42. With this knowledge, we started a prepaid Visa card project at the beginning of this school year. After securing 2 grants for a total of $16,000, we were able to distribute 3 cards to each school and giving each school a $1,500 budget. So far to date, we have dispersed close to $10,000 in aid, which not only includes the students, but also older young adults who reached out for assistance. And unfortunately, it isn't even winter yet. We also help pay for driving school, which is mandatory for new drivers under 18 in the state of Maine and could cost up to $600. And we are prepared to refer young adults to agencies where they can receive supportive case management, assistance in the emancipation of a minor, and guidance in learning crucial life skills. We are always ready to provide an effective response that may come up. When we first started But Still I Am One, we went to the schools and asked them what their students needed. One of the principals, in fact, several of the principals, but this one principal said to us, safety and transportation. So in seeking to expand our assistance to young adults, we have hired a host home coordinator to start our host home project. There are two types of host homes. The first type is the kinship home. This is where the homeless young adult has self-selected where they want to live. It could be a friend's, coach, or another family member like a grandparent. The other type of home is the stranger's home. This is where the host and young adult don't know each other. We match them up according to the questionnaires they each fill out. With both types of homes, we do a background check on both parties. There is a 30-question questionnaire that is filled out by both parties, and the questionnaires are then compared for any differences. These will need to be worked out by the host and young adult before moving forward. The home is also checked to make sure it is safe. It must have a smoke alarm, fire extinguisher, and there must be 2 ways to exit. After everything checks out, then we will reimburse the host up to $300 a month for their added expenses of providing room and board to the young adult. Our coordinator will meet weekly with the parties to make sure everyone is happy with the arrangement. By reimbursing the host up to $300 a month for the additional expenses incurred, we seek to offer the support that will enable hosts to provide the consistent and dependable home we wish for all young adults. With this new stability, young adults can more confidently decide their next steps, completing high school, entering college or a training program like the Waldo County Technical Center or Penobscot Job Corps, or proceeding directly into the workforce. Our long-term vision is to one day be able to lease or purchase a building in order to provide a safe haven for our clients, a place they can call home. Of course, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we have done so far without the support of the community, our dedicated board of directors, and our volunteers. And speaking of volunteers, we are growing very fast, and so we need more. You can volunteer in a variety of ways. A one-time short commitment. We periodically have events such as a panel, art sale, or pizza party, and we need volunteers for the day of the event. A short-term commitment. We can always use extra help in planning events, or a monthly commitment by becoming a member of our board of directors. We meet on Zoom, and you would be helping oversee the growth of our organization and its interface with our communities. If you would be interested in receiving more information about the 3 organizations sponsoring this discussion and the whole week of events, that would be But Still I Am One, Family Promise in Midcoast, Maine, and the Maine Statewide Youth Action Board. There are trifold brochures on the back table. Also, if you would like information sent to you or would like to sign up to volunteer, you can fill in the white form and we will get back to you. The mantra of But Still I Am One is a quote by Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something I can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Neva, and thank you to all of our panel speakers today. We now will begin a question and answer session. I will moderate questions here, and so what in the back is on Zoom to keep an eye for folks that want to ask a question on Zoom, so you'll both have an opportunity. Does anyone here in the audience have a question for any of our panelists, or a general question? Art.
This is for Ms. Hedrick with Family Promise. Is the presentation that you gave online, is that available on your website, or some way I can get that for being able to present it on Monday? I have another presentation I got to do on that.
Sure, I'm working with Suetta to make sure that you all have access to it.
Other questions? Anyone on Zoom? Oh, sorry.
My question is about the Job Corps. Could you describe the housing situation, and maybe especially for people who would have concerns about safety and how that all gets taken care of?
Sure, yeah, so we have dormitories so there's a male dorm and a female dorm, and 4-door room, and in those rooms, each room has their own bathroom, and each student gets their own closet, their own bedding, all that stuff. Laundry facilities are on site as well. Students get laundry. We pay for everything as far as laundry detergent, any kind of personal hygiene needs they have, things like that, we can pay for as well. We also have a recreation center where students can go and enjoy the rec center. If we do get a McKinney-Vento student and they say they're unaccompanied, they are, until they turn 18 years old, they have to remain on campus. They follow the same minor rules that any one of our minor students have to go through. But there's plenty of opportunity for those students to go off campus. We have off-center trips to the movie theaters, bowling alley, hiking trips, camping trips, anything like that. So, yeah. We do, yeah. So however the student identifies, and we'll place them, and we can put them in that room, and yeah, so, yeah, for sure. So right now, we have 100. Just to put it out there, by the way, I forgot to mention this. We have 120 open beds right now. So we're operating about 50% of where we need to be, where we want to be. So typically between 2 and 3 to a room right now. However, we can go up to 4. Yeah. So. Yeah.
To the woman connected to school, you'd mentioned connecting kids with resources, and I was wondering how much town offices, the state, DHS, how much help do you get? What's that look like?
Well, at the risk of being a little out there, I would say the DHHS is pretty broken. It's very difficult, but I have been applying for food stamps and Maine Care, and sometimes I can get that, sometimes it gets lost in the whole twisted bureaucracy. Someone moves, they never get a call, nobody ever reaches out to them. I can't talk to a supervisor because they won't allow me to have a supervisor's number. So if I want to call DHHS, I have to call the call line, sometimes wait an hour, and then they won't tell me much unless I beg and plead and tell them of a situation. And then sometimes they'll say, okay, I can tell you this person gets Maine Care, but don't tell anyone I told you, and no, you can't have a supervisor's number. And I'm not the guardian, right? So I'm an outside person. There are privacy issues, privacy laws that, in my opinion, sometimes are obstacles. So I'm not a fan of DHHS. They could do more. They also are not that aware of McKinney-Vento. And when they have kids in foster care, I've had kids leave foster care for reasons that were important to the teenager, and DHS does not they don't help them. I help them. They don't, it's not a really good system, to be honest. So I also take people to Social Security to apply for SSI for their disabled child, to get disability for themselves if they haven't gotten it. And I have had more luck even though there's a huge, if you fill out an application at Social Security, it sometimes takes 3 to 4 to 5 months to get on a program. But at least there's not a long wait. You can get there in person. I can go with a person. I've taken a grandmother and an 18-year-old and a 50-year-old in the last few weeks for different reasons, going there, the young person to get a Social Security card, the grandmother person to get SSI for a grandchild who's living with them. That's the host home. And, it's a special needs child, and the child is going to age out of the system when they're 18 if they need to get a payee. Every situation is unique, so there's not one situation, but they all require, in my opinion, a lot of people who are in these situations, they need like somebody to coach them, to help them, to show them how to do it. And really, I don't know anybody else around that's doing it but me, to be honest. And it's a huge burden, and the school would prefer me not to drive anybody who's in school, so that's another problem. So I have met people outside of school, driven them, and then brought them back to school. I'm getting around it, but it's not like totally kosher. Oh, the towns are great. The Belfast Soup Kitchen partnered with us, and we have a food pantry in our school. Anybody can go and fill up a bag of food. We're giving out 2,000 pounds of produce for free to Stockton and Searsport residents every month, twice a month, 1,000 pounds twice a month on every first and third Tuesday, and that's for free. We're working through the soup kitchen, who gets it from Good Shepherd Food Bank, and it's completely free. We have to buy the food that's in our pantry, the meals that you can microwave. The shelf food costs money. The Belfast Soup Kitchen, again, we used to do that all on our own. The Belfast Soup Kitchen is now writing the grants, ordering the food. The truck comes to our school. Teenagers in the alternative programs unload it, pack the young people's bags. We have this program called Hush, Help Us Stop Hunger. And like I said, we're packing 40 to 50 bags of food for little ones to take home so that they can have, we give them 3 dinners, 2 breakfasts, bunch of snacks, and a little fresh food if we have like an apple or a plum or something, because they have to schlep it on the bus. The we is the RSU 20. My part-time job, I engage the alternative teenagers. I can't do all that lifting, so they meet the truck, they unload the stuff, they pack it, we bring it to a room. We have a room that's a closet. I'm talking about the school system when I say we. The school system is doing this. At least RSU 20 is doing this. The problem with the decree for McKinney-Vento, to be honest, is a lot of school systems didn't hire somebody to do the job like my school system did. They attached the McKinney-Vento role to the superintendent, to the special ed director, to somebody who already has a job, and they don't do the outreach. I'm calling people up saying, what do you need? Do you need food? What do you need? Have you put in an application to, Maine State Housing? Because you should, because sometimes you get lucky. You don't not apply just because there's a line. You apply, and you can always say no thank you if you don't need it anymore. But get on the list. You have to reach out, so it means a lot of phone calls, and it's hard to reach people. People run out of minutes on their phone. You're talking to people who don't have much. If your car breaks, how do you buy a new car or an old or a used car if you have no job and no money? Yeah.
Thank you. I'll ask again if anybody on Zoom has a question. I see Neva's hand up.
I don't have a question much as I have a thought, which is, or something to say, which is McKinney-Vento is great in that it helps with transportation for a student from to a school that they want. But where they really falter is in providing other things for the student. For instance, we had one where they lost the contents of their bedroom because of a fire. McKinney-Vento won't step in and replace all of that. And so with that, but still I am one, we were able to help them so that they were able to replace the things that were in their bedroom. And we find that a lot, that McKinney-Vento only goes so far, and there's still a lot that's needed. And that's where But Still I Am One has been able to fill in that gap that that is present. And I think it is quite a shame that McKinney-Vento doesn't go farther than that.
Yeah, I think the concept of McKinney-Vento is good, but they haven't, like, what they should say is you need to hire a person in your district to do this. That's what they need to do. And they also have a pilot program for $750 per homeless child per year. But again, I have to advocate for that money because it doesn't come to me, it goes to the superintendent's office, and they want to maybe put it in transportation, you know, but I want to give it to people who really have, you know, immediate needs. So, you know, it's like a negotiation, advocacy, fisticuffs, you know, yeah. Well, he had a question, and there's a question there too.
Yeah, my question was for Brenna, and just wondering what, if anything, would you have liked to see in your school that might have made you feel more comfortable asking for help or advocating for yourself? Like whether it was a staff person like her or a program or information or anything.
Yeah, the one thing, I don't know if it's unique to Mount Desert Island High School, is that a lot of people assume that all the students there come from wealthy families because it's a very wealthy area. It might be the case in Belfast as well, as but so a lot of people didn't even assume that there were people in poverty, and it wasn't until after COVID that I started seeing services like, oh, if you're a homeless youth, then you can come pick up this boxes, or if your family's struggling. But until COVID happened, which was in my senior year in high school, nobody talked about anyone being even in poverty. Everyone was talking about how they had like 5 different houses and in-ground pools and everything. And so even just like visibility of other people understanding that people are struggling to live on MDI, that there's a lot of, it's really, really hard to get housing on MDI would have been helpful. And then also, yeah, like if there was a person that would have first noticed, you know, like this person needed help, let me talk to you, let's see what kind of services are available to you, instead of, you know, it wasn't like it was necessarily a secret to the superintendent, who was the one who tried to kick me out of school the first time, that I was struggling with housing in the area. It would have been a huge world of difference, even just connecting me with food services, which wasn't available at my school. And that's the other thing, is like there's, from school district to school district, is just so vastly different for different people depending on the services they provide.
Do you have ideas about how that could be integrated into different school roles and like even classrooms? About like
Yeah. Well, you know, I inform teachers and send them little videos about, you know, signs of homelessness, you know, hygiene issues, wearing the same clothes, coming in tired, you know, and teachers, you know, lots of times teachers refer. It's not always the kid or the parent, you know, because we have homeless families, and then we have the unaccompanied youth, which was you. And, you know, I think the problem is you can have a McKinney-Vento law, but if you don't, like, use it, if you don't, like, make sure that somebody's making it work, what good is it, right? So that's where they need to improve. Although I have to say, the state DOE, the Department of Ed, has a McKinney-Vento coordinator, and she's great, answers my questions, tries to advocate if I reach a dead end. I mean, there are some people that are working really hard, so it's not all. But the concept could be even better, is because it could be more uniform between school districts. And that's true. Everybody thinks Mount Desert is rich. I mean, my area is known as a poor area, but there are those mansions on Route 1, right? So it's, but we have, I would say we have more poverty kids than rich kids for sure, but there's all kinds in every school. So yeah, and I think homelessness is invisible, even the ones that aren't attached to school. That's a big problem. I've heard lots of people say they're not visible. Nobody knows about them. And communities, not all communities, not all people, but they don't want them in their neighborhood, right? They don't want that riffraff, right?
Maybe there's something if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think also education too. So I didn't know the term McKinney-Vento till about probably 6 months ago. And we have a Job Corps that's in Sacramento, California that is experiencing quite a bit of it because there's a lot of unaccompanied minors coming in to that area of the state, and they began working with McKinney-Vento students. So recently we had a young man from the Bangor area that the mother was nowhere to be found, and I had to educate the Bangor High School person about McKinney-Vento. We're still in the process of, he's in a safe place right now, but if he wasn't, it would still be that, and it all went through the school. So I think education could be a little bit better with that too, throughout the state, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm just wondering about if you have any tips about advocating for a specific McKinney-Vento person in the school system rather than letting the superintendent have it. Do we go through the state to this coordinator and say, you know, in Belfast, I want to see a specific McKinney-Vento advocate in our school system, you know, or, you know, in outlying towns. So I'd love some tips on how to advocate for that. Thanks.
Well, you know, there is a McKinney-Vento person at Belfast, but she's also the assistant superintendent. So she has a big job to do, right? It takes a long time to call 20 homes and find out what's going on. How can you do that? And I'm only working 2 days a week. But that's my choice, right? But it could be easily a full-time job for 2 people in our little tiny school, which is tiny, tiny, tiny. So you think of a bigger school, and I just want to say, there's not enough people working. We lack teachers, a special ed director, substitutes, ed techs, kitchen workers, custodians. There's so many jobs available at school. And I have been getting some homeless adults jobs at school.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom?
I just wanted to say that this whole Zoom has been recorded and will be on the websites of any of the organizations who want it. Also, Nikisha's presentation, she's already sent it to me, and it will go on to the websites. And lastly, the 2 Belfast organizations that are 2 of the 3 sponsors of this are being run, as Neva said, by very few of us volunteers. You know, like there's less than 15 of us on both boards together. So really, please say, you know, what might I do? Even if it's just one little thing, because maybe you'll hear something and suddenly you'll find somebody that it can help. So, and I'm just grateful for everybody who's spoken up, especially the youth. Thanks.
Thank you, Sawada, and thank you, Nikisha, for sending us those slides. That'll be helpful to anyone to go back and review. I see no more questions, so I guess our program has come to an end. Thank you all for coming. Thank you folks on Zoom for attending as well. You will not be able to take advantage of the cookies that have been provided by Michael's Culinary Arts program, but I'm sure that the rest of us will enjoy them as well. And there's actually something healthy back there if you're really into that kind of stuff. So thanks you once again.